Hello, and welcome to the Political Opinions podcast, where every opinion is given equal footing and political tolerance and debate are given their proper attention in a world where both are on the decline. Today's episode was meant to be the different opinions on what to do if Trump was too unhealthy to continue to operate as president. However, over the week, it is reported that he has made a very fast recovery, and as such I have had to change the topic. So instead, this episode will go over the different opinions on how to run future presidential debates after what have some considered to be the worst presidential debate of all time between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate was viewed to be as bad as it was because of the constant interruptions from both sides and general failure to properly address questions, as well as a large degree of unprofessionalism, including name-calling, personal and family attacks, and general ill will between the participants. As a result, some have called for the format and operation of these debates to be changed to allow a better display of the candidates and prevent another showcase of squabbling, which doesn't actually fulfill the purpose of a debate in regards to showing the public the different candidates and their policies on specific issues in relation to one another. The aim of this episode will not be to try and make the case that debates should or should not change, or that any particular side was worse than another, as there are many places that have already given their opinions on these. Instead, the aim will be to highlight the arguments for and against reform to debates, including moderator power, fact-checking, and what is allowed to be said, and then provide a comparison between them. Also, while there are different ranges to the degree that people think debates should be changed, in the interests of time and simplicity, I will limit the sides to that they should be changed and shouldn't be changed. With that being said, I will now start with the argument that debates should be reformed. One of the key arguments that presidential debates should be reformed revolves around the power of the moderator. Chris Wallace was left frustrated as moderator of the first debate between Trump and Biden, as he was unable to keep the two candidates under control, especially regarding interruptions. And with over 300 interruptions from both sides, it is clear to some that more power should be given to the moderator to silence candidates and ensure order is maintained. This could involve the moderator having the ability to mute candidates' microphones and more freedom for them to ensure both sides have a say. If the moderator has more control, it is argued that debates will be fairer and more productive between both sides, especially regarding less interruptions. Another argument is to incorporate the use of fact-checkers. Debates involve lots of different topics and lots of facts and figures within each topic, and therefore a problem arises that, given the nature of debates, viewers and moderators are unable to ensure what they hear is the truth, as by the time they have looked up whatever fact they want to check, the debate has moved on to something completely different. And for this reason, some would push for more fact-checking by independent groups such as archivists and journalists during the debate, who would highlight when figures are wrong, and this would ensure that debates more closely reflect reality regarding the information provided within them. Another idea some have put forward is to simply turn off a microphone when a candidate isn't speaking, as this ensures that both sides have their say when it is their turn to speak, and is ultimately just a surefire way to prevent interruptions. Some have also wanted a greater push for cross-examination. Debates usually involve one side giving their piece, the other side giving theirs, and then moving on, and this allows for very little actual comparison between the two sides and prevents viewers from having a clear difference in policies. Therefore, cross-examination conducted by the candidates will ensure that both sides have a chance to properly critique and compare their policies to the opponent. A more radical idea involves the use of sit-down debates, such as the format used in the second debate between Al Gore and George Bush Jr. This provides a more personal and formal style of debate where candidates are seated at a table with the moderator. It is argued by some that being close to your opponent will make you more likely to be civil and cordial rather than shouting from the other side of a stage, and an intimate conversation without a large audience takes away energy from the debate and allows candidates to focus on what actually matters, which is their policies in relation to their opponent's policies. And finally, some have pushed for simply to remove any tolerance for personal attacks, in the argument essentially that they are not necessary and they shouldn't be tolerated. So essentially this idea is that moderators, or whichever system is used, should prevent candidates from critiquing others on a personal basis, and that debate should only focus on policies. Moving on now to the arguments that debates shouldn't be reformed. Firstly, revolving moderator power, there is a fear with many people that if you give the moderator too much power, there is the potential for them to abuse it. If the moderator was not impartial and did indeed have a bias, they could use their power to allow one candidate to, for example, have strategic interruptions and cut off the other person unfairly. Giving a moderator the complete power in a debate to mute people would also take power and focus away from the candidates, of which the debate is the focus. It focuses on the candidate, not on the moderator. Fact checkers have also been doubted in their ability. They too have to research the facts and cannot instantly provide a result. This means that facts that are wrong and have to be corrected can interrupt the flow of the debate. If the debate is constantly stopped due to fact-checking that it is argued by some that the debate itself will be ruined, and, for example, disputed and estimated figures can also be unfairly targeted by fact-checkers on the basis that there is no definitive result for a lot of them. And also there's just a question of how would it work, because it doesn't fit the nature of debates. Would you pause the debate? Would candidates have the ability to question the other? It's very complicated, and some would question how well it would actually work. Moving on to the idea of turning off microphones when not speaking, there is a criticism that it prevents candidates from providing a defence when it may be crucial to do so. If they have already spoken and are then muted, they have no further chance to argue their corner and defend their standpoint. Regarding the idea of cross-examination, some people doubt its effectiveness, and it may not result in good evaluation. For example, the candidate may simply try and say why their policies are better, and as such, it does what candidates already do during a debate, but in a more specific format regarding comparison, and some would claim it would even be a waste of time and wouldn't help that much. Then moving on to the idea of a sit-down debate, many would argue that it removes integral parts of a debate, mainly showing a presidential candidate's personality. The president has to be a likeable person, and how they react to their opponent, to pressure, and to a crowd can be important indicators of how they will act as president. As such, more formal and intimate debates would not serve a purpose, as you can have anyone sitting there and listing a candidate's policies. It makes more sense for the candidates themselves to be debating in a more open and electrifying environment and have other people simply listing their policies on, for example, the news channels. And it would also be claimed that less people would watch it, as it would most likely be quite boring. And then finally, regarding personal attacks, those people against banning these would firstly say that it can highlight flaws in the acts of candidates in the past. For example, Trump's attacks on Hillary have led many to claim that it led to people voting for her in less great numbers, on the basis that some would question her integrity given some of her questionable actions in the past. And also, on the other side, it can indeed be used to show that a candidate has nothing more productive to say if they are simply resorting to personal attacks. Moving on now to the comparison. Regarding the power of moderators, those in favour of giving them more power would say that they would then have the ability to control debates and ensure that both sides are civil and prevent interruptions, while those on the other side would say that there is a risk that they are biased, even minutely, and the moderator having power could result in an unfair debate. Regarding fact-checkers, those in favour would say that it ensures debates are more realistic and prevents facts and lies. Candidates would either have to say their facts and figures, or simply say, if they know that they were proven wrong, I don't know, and prevents them from lying. While those on the other side would say that it would harm the flow of debates, and there are extreme practical problems as to how it would work. Regarding simply muting the microphone, those in favour would say that it is the best way to ensure that there are no interruptions and would allow candidates to speak when it is their turn. However, those on the other side would say that it prevents a candidate from defending themselves when it may be vital for them to do so. Regarding cross-examination, those in favour would say that it provides more comparison between the two sides, and that is the purpose of a debate, to compare the two candidates when they're on the same stage, and therefore you should have a specific area devoted to doing this in more detail. But those on the other side would say that it is already done and it would waste time, and it either wouldn't be done properly or there would be so much time spent on it that there would be no point in doing it. Then regarding a sit-down style of debate, those in favour would say that it is more formal and encourages fair discussion and prevents a president or presidential candidate from being motivated by a crowd, while those on the other side would say that this is part of a president's job, to be in crowds, to be in these kind of environments. Anyone can listen to their policies on the news, but you want to gauge them as a person, and that's where a public debate with a crowd is very useful. And then finally, on the idea of allowing personal attacks, those in favour of banning them would say that they're not necessary and they're rude, and the focus should be the policies, not just critiquing the actions of a presidential candidate's past. Whereas those on the other side would say that it can be useful to highlight flaws in a character, and on the other side of that can show when a president or presidential candidate has nothing more constructive to say. Ultimately, the arguments for and against reform for debate will come under even more scrutiny following the next presidential debate on October 15th, unless, of course, it is delayed to be done in person. And depending on what happens, it will either further the case for debate reform or will show that it isn't needed. Indeed, much of the arguments for or against debate reform depend upon the candidates at the time. For example, candidates like Trump focus more on aspects beyond just policy and try to test their opponent through personal attacks. However, you have had debates in the past where it is more essentially of two Biden-esque characters, where it can be more based on just policies. And as the debate between Kamala Harris and Vice President Pence showed, you can, even in the current climate, have civil debate. One's opinion also comes down to what they look for in the debate. If you're looking for personality, you may be more opposed to reform. However, if you only want to highlight the president's policies, then you may be more in favour of a more rigid and formal style of debate. But ultimately though, what do you think? What's your opinion on this topic? And is there anything that I got wrong, missed, or could do better? Let me know on Twitter or in the comments, and be sure to check back on Monday for what is definitely the different opinions on how powerful a nation's armed forces should be. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you all soon.